This week I also I watched we talked about Quentin Tarantino a few weeks ago, and so I got a Quentin Tarantino high. I watched his first two movies over again. I watched Reservoir Dogs and Pulp Fiction. My God, those movies are some of the best ever made, especially as far as like a directorial debut. I don't think they get better than that. They are so good. Pulp Fiction specifically, I forgot how good that movie is and how
Well, and it's funny. Sorry, I'm just gonna hop in here really quickly.
no, go ahead, please.
I have seen Reservoir Dogs. We watched that one together.
Yeah.
I have still not seen Pulp Fiction. I honestly, other than the very, very famous scenes, know next to nothing about the movie either. So I'm curious to hear your review, but I don't know all that much about the movie.
Well, then I,
Again,
I won't I won't
why
say
have
much
I
about
not
Pulp
seen it?
Fiction then.
Why have I not seen it? I don't know. I'll get around to it eventually, I promise. It's probably something we should do. I mean, I want to watch that with you, honestly, just because, again, we watched Reservoir Dogs together. But yeah,
We
I just wanted to pop in there and give that context.
we talked about our top 5 a few weeks ago. Pulp Fiction is definitely my top 10. It's genius. I love that
Yeah.
movie to death. Um, I'll start with Reservoir Dogs though, because you have seen that and you can understand this. I
Hmm.
think that the story is so simple, and as far as a debut goes, it doesn't break it doesn't like push any boundaries. It doesn't do anything that like changes the game. It just tells a simple story, but does it so well and does it in such a very unique style and flair that I don't think any director has ever done. What
Hmm.
Tarantino uh, uh, what, uh, what Tarantino does with his scripts and with his stories is make you feel for these characters in a certain way that you don't feel like you ever could. And with Reservoir Dogs specifically, these are horrible men. These are criminals. They are
Yeah.
here
Oh,
to do a
yeah.
bank heist. And very evidently so by the opening scene, they're sitting in this coffee shop and all they're doing is complaining about certain things. Mr. Brown talks about the song Like a Virgin, while Joe is being a completely racist person in the corner with a book reading off names. And then you have Mr. Pink, who refuses to tip the waitresses because of a belief that he has or whatever. And you realize that each and every one of these people, they're just horrible. Like every single one of
Yeah.
them. And he gets worse throughout
Yeah.
the movie as all these obstacles are thrown at them through various different things. Um, I don't know. I love the plot. I love it for any movie, but the plot of we need to figure out who the mole is. We need to figure out who ratted us out, and it's
Hmm.
a big mystery. It's kind of like Knives Out in the sense of who did the murder, who did the mystery. In this sense, it's okay who basically turned us over to the police, who has been working with the police this whole time, and who has basically been screwing us over. And that type of a plot is always so interesting to me because I'm always sucked into those types of plots. I want to know exactly who it is, and they always set it up. Tarantino specifically when he does a type of film like this, because there's one other film he's done that is very similar to Reservoir Dogs, but it's a western,
Hmm.
which is okay. I know where it's ending. How did we even get here? And it kind of connects the
Yeah.
dots along the way too. And I think that it is just it's a very I can't say it in any way. It is a very simple plot, but it's done in such a very powerful and poignant way that it is undoubtedly one of the greatest debuts for a director ever. Um, and so I love that movie. I try to watch it at least once a year. Pulp Fiction, on the other hand, because this is the one I really wanted to talk about, that changed the game for I think every film that came after it. Pulp
Hmm.
Fiction is a story out of time. And what I mean by that is it is also a very simple story. It's not overly complicated. The characters have a lot of heart. Tarantino does his typical Tarantino thing where it's okay, we're going to have a bunch of normal everyday dialogue with these characters who might be horrible or, it's just, it's so simple. But the thing that Pulp Fiction does that separates this from every other movie is it tells a cohesive story by switching what happens in what order and tells it in completely out of order random sequences. So you're not following one specific character through the entire story, but you're following the story and you're
Yeah.
following a specific set of things that happen. And like an example is at the beginning of the movie, and this is not necessarily a spoiler because this is the plot beat that happens at the beginning of the movie.
Yeah.
You open the movie with these two people who are just talking in a diner. It's everyday normal talk, and then they start talking about, oh yeah, let's talk about the next gas station robbery, or let's talk about the next stick up job. And they're sitting in this diner going, well, wait a second, wait, people have wallets. Diners might not make much money, but people have money in their wallets. Let's rob a diner. And they decide to do it. And that scene doesn't come back until the end of the movie when the two of the other characters are in this diner and you see that they were there the whole time, just we were in a different point of view, a different context of a scene. Like it's so genius the way they do it. The
I
character
do
that
want to
John
point
Travolta.
out. Sorry, I just want to. I do want to point out. It's very funny that both of the Quentin Tarantino films you're talking about start in a diner.
Oh
Um,
yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah.
like
Yeah. Yeah.
I don't know. I just want to point that out. Like I know that not all Quentin Tarantino films start like that, but it is very funny that like you're like starting to talk about the plot and you're like, okay, so Reservoir Dogs, we started this diner with some pieces of shit who are gonna rob people. And then you're like, okay, so Pulp Fiction, we start in a diner with some pieces of shit who are gonna rob people. It's like, okay. Okay, Quentin Tarantino, I see you have a type of film. Obviously, again, I know he's made different types of films and this isn't it. But that
Sure.
is really funny. Where it's like if you know nothing about Quentin Tarantino and you just hear that little soundbite of, okay, we start in a diner with bad people and they rob people. We start in a diner. It's like, okay, sure. Are
Like,
you sure you're talking about not a different movie?
but no, like so the John Travolta's character, Vincent Vega, who is, I guess you could classify the main character of the movie. Everybody in
Mm-hmm.
their own right in the movie is like a main character. It could be Bruce Willis, it could be Uma Thurman, it could be Samuel L. Jackson. Like there's so many different characters you could classify all of them as main characters at one point. Um, but John Travolta's character, as this opening scene is happening in the diner with these two people who are talking about a robbery, you see his character from behind walking past. You don't know it's him, but then later in the scene, John Travolta's character goes, "All right, I got to go to the bathroom. I got to take a leak." He gets up and he walks, and you notice that's where he was going the whole time. That it's such genius directing and genius writing to just all of a sudden go, oh, like almost like on rewatch, you watch and go, oh my
Yeah.
gosh, that this was there the whole time, and he was walking past here. It's just it's genius filmmaking, and it is like I said, it's such a simple story, but the way they twist it and the way they turn it and the way they put everything out of order while at the same time letting it be this cohesive narrative, it's just done so masterfully. And it's hard to not love Pulp Fiction for that, or at least admire it for the reason. If you're somebody who doesn't like Tarantino as a director, which I can understand, I met one person who just doesn't like him as a director and doesn't like his storytelling or
Mm-hmm.
doesn't like his overuse of violence or language. I understand that. I can understand why some people don't. I think they're crazy, but I understand. Um, but it's one of those things of it's hard not to at least look at the movie and go, that was really well done, or I can like I
Yeah.
still admire what you did, even if it's not necessarily
Yeah,
my type of film.
you can still tell that it was well thought out. Like that's the
Yes,
one thing that I really appreciated about Reservoir Dogs is it's not I'll just say it's not like not in my top 15 even probably favorite movies, but I did really
sure,
enjoy the experience. It's not my typical type of movie. I mean, I shouldn't even say
sure.
that because I don't want to say I have a typical type of movie. It was definitely a unique experience at the time that I watched this like I don't even remember like 5 years ago at this point. Um but I really you can tell the intelligence in the sense of I really like, and I don't know how to put this in words. I've taken one film class in my entire life, so I'm very shit with terminology. But I will say probably the shot. I think the right word would be shot composition, in the sense of I guess how the movie is assembled.
Yeah,
In the sense of when things happen, because you're taking course over the movie takes place over the course of like barely a day, essentially, like the entire movie, and you're jumping around, but a lot of the time you're just in one place. And I just really like the choices that he makes in terms of where you are and what part of the story you're telling with where you are. Now, again, that sounds generic, but I really think that Quentin Tarantino, at least in Reservoir Dogs, does a really good job of this. And it sounds like, again, I haven't seen a ton of Quentin Tarantino films, but it sounds like that's kind of a trend of his in terms of
Sure.
how scenes are I guess come together, but in what order and how that story is told, not necessarily
Sure.
start to finish cohesively. It like might be a little bit more all over the place than a typical movie, but it's still
Sure.
cohesive.
Well, and I'll also add to that, like Tarantino just is such a great, fantastic writer. There's another movie of his, one that I will have you watch at one point. There's a ton I'm gonna have you watch, but one specifically is called Inglorious Bastards, which is a big World
Yeah,
War II picture, which I know
yeah.
you know what that is at least. Um,
Yeah, I've never, again, never seen it, but I have heard a lot about it.
and Tarantino's writing and just the opening scene alone, the whole point of the scene is that uh, Colonel Hans Landa comes to this house where from the beginning you don't know why he's there. You think he's there just to check off the boxes of like, okay, have you seen this Jewish family? Have you seen where they gone? Do you know anything? But the whole time he knows they're underneath the floorboards. Like he knows that they're
Mm,
hiding these people. And you as the audience know pretty much from the beginning he's been hiding people under the floorboards. But
yeah,
what Tarantino does is Hans is this normal average guy. He comes in, he asks for a glass of milk, but then he has dialogue changing and he starts telling the story. And I think what Tarantino does specifically with words and how he phrases things or how he builds suspense and uneasiness, especially with like tension with just dialogue, is
yeah,
rare. You don't get that. Sometimes you get intimidation or scenes like that with like absolute silence, or you see two characters just sitting in a room with uncomfortable ease. Tarantino just full on sends it, and he uses camera shots and dialogue and certain things to set the mood for each scene that he
hmm,
tells. And
yeah,
Inglorious Bastards does that very well with its opening scene. And Pulp Fiction and Reservoir Dogs are both no exception to that rule. Um, the whole scene at the very end of Reservoir Dogs, as Joe finally comes back and is like, "Don't worry, guys, I figured it out." The guy who got shot and is lying on the ground, Mr. Orange, yeah, he's been working with the LAPD. Um, he's the only person who I wasn't 100% on for this job, so I know it was him. And it
yeah,
creates this whole dialogue of, no, 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 Joe, you're wrong. And Mr. White pulls out his gun. He pulls it at Joe. Nice guy Eddie pulls his gun out and points it at Mr. White. And it's this whole standoff. But not once do they stand there in silence, like good and the bad and the ugly, staring at each other, building the suspense for them to shoot. They're talking it out. And you feel
yeah.
the suspense. You have Mr. Pink in the corner going, guys, nobody wants this. We're supposed to be professional. And it builds such a suspense that
Yeah,
oh,
I was gonna bring up that scene because yeah, like it's that scene in particular when you were talking about dialogue. That was the first thing that I thought of was that scene from Reservoir Dogs with the standoff in the way that there's doubt being sowed and questions being asked and no one knows the truth and no one wants to believe the truth and
sure.
again, just the way that they talk through that scene is I think it's just masterfully written. And again, it's you're cutting between kind of not perspectives, but like you're looking at the different characters when they're talking, or maybe when they're not talking, and just again building up like no, like we know at that point. If I remember correctly, we know who is
Yes.
the real
We
traitor, but
we know that
they
Mr.
don't,
Orange is the
and you're
traitor.
like,
Yeah.
yeah,
Or at
yeah,
least
yeah.
Mr. White doesn't know, and technically Nice Guy Eddie doesn't know. Joe himself doesn't even technically know. He believes it's
Hmm.
this because everybody else on his team has proven that they're killers, or they've killed somebody, or they've been in jail, or that they've specifically they've done other jobs for Joe. Mr. Orange was the first person who like he wasn't 100% on. He didn't know who he was prior. He just had a story from Mr. Orange, and that was it. So he took a big guess
Yeah.
and assumed this is more than likely what it is. And again, like just going back to like Tarantino, I just love him as a director. I'm probably gonna watch
Not
more of his
again,
films and talk about them later on at some
Terry.
point.